The space around Nexus Prime buzzed with activity as the remaining ships of the Zephyrian fleet waited in formation. Admiral Kexthara stood on his flagship's bridge, watching the scanner displays with growing anxiety. The human ship was supposed to arrive any moment now, and he desperately hoped it would bring the salvation his people needed. "Admiral, we're detecting a hyperspace signature," reported his sensor officer. "It's the human vessel." Kexthara straightened his uniform and prepared to welcome Earth's mighty fleet. Surely they would send dozens of ships, maybe hundreds. The humans had seemed so confident that one ship would be enough, but that had to be a translation error. Or some kind of human joke? A flash of light appeared in the distance, and a single ship emerged from hyperspace? Kexthara stared at it in disbelief. It was sleek and well-built, with clean lines and what looked like advanced technology. But it was just one ship. Not a fleet, not even a small task force. Just one lonely vessel against the entire Vorthan Empire. "That's it," whispered his communications officer. "That's their entire response." The human ship was impressive by most standards. It was about 800 meters long, with a distinctive design that looked both elegant and dangerous. Its hull was dark gray with blue markings, and it moved with smooth precision as it approached the Zephyrian fleet. "Incoming transmission from the human vessel," announced the communications officer. "Put it through," Kexthara ordered, trying to keep the disappointment out of his voice. The main screen flickered, and a human man appeared. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with short black hair and calm brown eyes. His uniform was simple but well-made, and he carried himself with the easy confidence of someone used to command. "Admiral Kexthara, I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Endeavor. We're here to assist in your defense against the Vorthan Empire." Kexthara struggled to find words. "Captain Morrison, welcome to our system. I must ask, are there other Earth ships following behind you?" Morrison looked puzzled. "No, Admiral. The Endeavor is the only vessel assigned to this mission." "Is there a problem?" "Captain, with respect, we informed Earth that the Vorthan Empire has thousands of ships. Surely one vessel, no matter how advanced, cannot face such numbers." Morrison's expression remained calm. "Admiral, I understand your concern, but Earth Command has full confidence in the Endeavor's capabilities. We've reviewed your intelligence reports, and we're prepared to handle the situation." Kexthara felt his hope crumbling. The humans either didn't understand the threat they were facing, or they had sent a token force just to say they had helped. Either way, it looked like the Zephyrian Confederation was doomed. "Very well, Captain," he said, trying to maintain his dignity. "We'll arrange a briefing with our military leaders. You'll need to understand what we're facing." 2 hours later, Captain Morrison and his senior officers sat in the Endeavor's main conference room with the Zephyrian Military Command. The room was small but efficient, with a large display screen and comfortable chairs around a metal table. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera, the ship's tactical officer, was a young woman with short red hair and sharp green eyes. She studied the Zephyrian intelligence reports with intense focus, occasionally making notes on her tablet. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Rivera said, looking up from her data. "The Vorthans use plasma-based weapons that can melt through most known armor types. Their ships have energy shields that can withstand direct nuclear bombardment, and they coordinate their fleets using some kind of hive mind communication system." Admiral Kexthara nodded grimly. "That's correct. Their largest ships carry weapons that can crack planets. They've destroyed entire worlds just to make a point. And their fleets move as one, like a school of fish or a flock of birds." Dr. Carol West, the Endeavor's chief science officer, leaned forward. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but her expression was serious as she reviewed the data. "These plasma weapons, what's their effective range?" "About 50,000 kilometers," replied the Zephyrian weapons expert. "Their accuracy drops off significantly beyond that distance, but at close range, they're devastatingly effective." "And their shields?" asked Commander Paul Rodriguez, the ship's engineer. He was a stocky man with dark hair and calloused hands from years of working with machinery. "They can absorb tremendous amounts of energy. We've hit them with our most powerful weapons, and their shields barely flickered. Morrison listened to the briefing with calm attention. Occasionally, he would ask a question or request clarification, but mostly he just absorbed the information. The Zephyrians grew increasingly nervous, as they realized the humans weren't showing any signs of concern about the overwhelming odds they faced. "Captain," Admiral Kexthara said finally, "I must ask again if you can request additional ships from Earth. The Vorthons will arrive with their main fleet within days. Even if your ship is very advanced, I don't see how one vessel can face thousands." Morrison looked around the table at his officers. Rivera was smiling slightly, as if she found something amusing. Dr. West was making calculations on her tablet. Rodriguez was examining the technical specifications of Vorthon weapons with what looked like professional interest rather than fear. "Admiral," Morrison said finally, "I appreciate your concern, but the Endeavor is more than capable of handling this situation. We'll need about 48 hours to prepare for combat operations, and then we'll be ready to engage the Vorthon fleet." The Zephyrians exchanged worried glances. The humans seemed either completely ignorant of the danger they faced, or they were putting on a brave front before their inevitable deaths. Either way, it didn't look good for anyone involved. After the briefing, the Zephyrian officers left the Endeavor in a state of barely controlled panic. As soon as they were gone, Morrison turned to his senior staff. "Initial assessment, Dr. West?" The science officer looked up from her tablet with a slight smile. "Their technology is about what we expected from the preliminary reports. The Vorthons are using enhanced fusion weapons and basic energy shields. Impressive by local standards, but nothing we haven't seen before." "Tactical analysis, Commander Rivera?" Rivera's smile widened. "Sir, I'd estimate we could handle their entire fleet with our point defense systems alone. Their weapons are short-range and slow-firing. Their ships are large but not particularly fast or maneuverable. And their coordination system, while effective, relies on predictable movement patterns." "Engineering perspective, Commander Rodriguez?" Rodriguez chuckled. "Captain, their most powerful weapons put out about as much energy as our auxiliary power systems. Their shields might stop their own weapons, but they won't even slow down our kinetic penetrators." Morrison nodded. "So we're looking at a standard defensive action against primitive local forces? Any special preparations needed?" "I'd recommend we test the new quantum torpedo system," Rivera suggested. "This would be a good opportunity to see how they perform in actual combat." "Approved," Morrison said. "Dr. West, I want a full analysis of their technology once we start collecting debris. This might give us insights into how this region of space has developed." As the meeting ended, none of the humans seemed particularly concerned about the approaching Vorthon fleet. To them, this was just another mission, another chance to test their equipment and gather intelligence. The idea that they might be in danger never crossed their minds. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kexthara stared out at the lone human ship. It looked so small and fragile compared to his own massive vessels. How could one ship, no matter how advanced, stand against the combined might of the Vorthon Empire? "Sir," his communications officer reported, "long-range sensors are detecting movement at the edge of the system." "It looks like Vorthon scout ships." Kexthara's blood ran cold. The enemy was arriving ahead of schedule. Soon the full fleet would follow, and then they would all discover whether the humans' confidence was justified, or if they had all made a terrible mistake. He opened a channel to the Endeavor. "Captain Morrison, we have Vorthon scouts entering the system. The main fleet won't be far behind." Morrison's voice came back calm and steady. "Understood, Admiral. The Endeavor will be ready." Kexthara could only hope that the humans knew something. He didn't, because if they were wrong, everyone in the system would be dead within hours. The hyperspace alert sounded across the bridge of Admiral Kexthara's flagship as sensors detected the approaching human vessel. Every officer on the bridge stopped what they were doing and stared at the main display. After 3 days of desperate waiting, Earth's response was finally arriving. "Admiral, hyperspace signature detected," announced the sensor officer. Single vessel approaching from the Earth vector. Kexthara felt his heart's racing. A single vessel meant the main fleet would follow shortly. Surely the humans wouldn't send just one ship to face the entire Vorthan Empire. It had to be a scout, or an advance guard for the real force. The flash of light appeared in the distance, and a ship emerged from hyperspace. Kexthara watched the tactical display carefully, waiting for more ships to appear. 1 minute passed. Then 2, then 5. The space around the single human vessel remained empty. "Sir," the communications officer said quietly, "that appears to be the only ship." Kexthara stared at the human vessel on his screen. It was sleek and well-designed, with flowing lines that suggested advanced engineering. The ship was about 800 meters long, which made it respectable by most standards, but tiny compared to his own flagship. More importantly, it was alone. "Are you certain there are no other ships?" Kexthara asked, hoping he was wrong. "Yes, Admiral. Long-range sensors show no other hyperspace signatures in the area. The human vessel is transmitting Earth identification codes, but it's definitely alone." A cold feeling settled in Kexthara's stomach. The humans had sent one ship. One single vessel to face 3,000 Vorthan warships. Either they didn't understand the threat they were dealing with, or they considered the Zephyrian Confederation not worth saving. The human ship moved through space with smooth precision, approaching the Zephyrian fleet formation. Its engines produced a soft blue glow, and its hull reflected the light from the nearby star. Despite his disappointment, Kexthara had to admit it was a beautiful vessel. "Incoming transmission from the human ship," reported the communications officer. "Put it through immediately," Kexthara ordered, straightening his uniform and trying to look dignified despite his despair. The main screen flickered, and a human face appeared. The man was tall and broad-shouldered, with short dark hair and calm brown eyes. He wore a simple but well-made uniform, and he looked completely relaxed despite the desperate situation he was flying into. "Admiral Kexthara, I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Heavy Cruiser Endeavor. We're here in response to your request for military assistance against the Vorthan Empire." Kexthara tried to keep his voice steady. "Captain Morrison, welcome to our system. We are grateful that Earth has responded to our plea for help." He paused, trying to find a diplomatic way to ask his question. "Captain, are there additional Earth vessels following your ship?" Morrison looked genuinely puzzled. "No, Admiral. The Endeavor is the only vessel assigned to this mission. Earth Command determined that one ship would be sufficient for your defensive needs." The words hit Kexthara like a physical blow. One ship would be sufficient. The humans either had no idea what they were facing, or they had such advanced technology that they believed one vessel could handle the entire Vorthan fleet. Given what he knew about galactic technology levels, the first option seemed more likely. "Captain," Kexthara said carefully, "I want to make sure you understand the situation. Our intelligence indicates that the Vorthan Empire will arrive with approximately 3,000 warships, including their flagship dreadnought. Are you certain that one vessel will be adequate?" Morrison's expression remained calm and confident. "Admiral, I've reviewed all the intelligence data that Captain Grant transmitted to Earth Command. Based on that analysis, the Endeavor is more than capable of handling the projected threat level." Kexthara felt his hope dying. The humans clearly didn't understand what they were up against. The Vorthan Empire had weapons that could crack planets and shields that could absorb nuclear bombardment. How could one ship, no matter how advanced, stand against such overwhelming force? "Very well, Captain," he said, resigned to their fate. "We'll arrange quarters for you and conduct a full tactical briefing. You need to understand exactly what kind of enemy we're facing." 4 hours later, Captain Morrison and his senior officers sat in the Endeavor's main conference room with the surviving leadership of the Zephyrian military. The room was smaller than Kexthara had expected, with simple metal walls and basic furniture. Everything about the human ship seemed efficient but unremarkable. Lieutenant Commander Alex Rivera, the ship's tactical officer, was a young woman with bright red hair and intelligent green eyes. She studied the Zephyrian battle reports with intense concentration, occasionally making notes on a small electronic pad. Let me see if I understand the Vorthan tactical doctrine, Rivera said, looking up from her data. They use massed formations of heavy ships, each armed with long-range plasma weapons. Their standard attack pattern involves surrounding the target and firing simultaneously from multiple angles. General Vextar, the Zephyrian military commander, nodded grimly. That's correct. Their plasma cannons can melt through any known armor at ranges up to 50,000 kilometers. Once they surround a target, escape becomes impossible. Dr. Carol West, the Endeavor's chief science officer, leaned forward. She was an older woman with gray hair and kind but serious eyes. These plasma weapons, what's their charging cycle? About 30 seconds for a full power shot, replied the Zephyrian weapons specialist. But they can fire lower power bursts continuously? And their defensive capabilities? Energy shields that can absorb tremendous amounts of damage. We've hit them with our most powerful weapons and barely scratched their defenses. Commander Paul Rodriguez, the Endeavor's chief engineer, studied the technical specifications with professional interest. He was a stocky man with dark hair and the confident manner of someone who understood complex machinery. What kind of power systems do they use? Rodriguez asked. Enhanced fusion reactors as far as we can determine. Very efficient by galactic standards. Morrison listened to the briefing without showing any signs of concern. Occasionally he would ask a clarifying question, but mostly he just absorbed the information. The Zephyrians found his calm attitude either inspiring or terrifying, depending on their perspective. Captain, Admiral Kexthara said finally, I must ask again if you can request additional ships from Earth. The Vorthans have superior numbers, superior weapons, and superior defenses. Even with your advanced technology, I don't see how one ship can prevail against such odds. Morrison looked around the table at his officers. Rivera was still studying the tactical data, but she was smiling slightly, as if she found something. Amusing, Dr. West was making calculations on her electronic pad. Rodriguez was examining the Vorthan weapon specifications with what looked like professional curiosity rather than fear. Admiral, Morrison said finally, I understand your concern, but Earth Command has full confidence in the Endeavor's capabilities. We've faced similar threats before, and our defensive systems are specifically designed to handle overwhelming numerical odds, similar threats. Kexthara wondered what kind of enemies the humans regularly faced that made the Vorthan Empire seem routine. Either Earth space was filled with incredibly dangerous species, or the humans had technology so advanced that they viewed galactic-level threats as minor problems. Captain, Kexthara asked hesitantly, may I ask what class of vessel the Endeavor represents in your fleet? Morrison checked his notes. The Endeavor is a Mark 7 heavy cruiser. She's been in service for about 15 years now. Not our newest design, but still very capable. Not their newest design. The ship that Earth had sent to face the most powerful fleet in the galaxy was considered outdated by human standards. Kexthara didn't know whether to be impressed by human confidence or terrified by their apparent ignorance of the danger they faced. How many crew members does your ship carry? Asked General Vextar. 847 personnel, Morrison replied. That includes command staff, engineering, medical, and marine contingents. The Zephyrians exchanged glances. 800 humans were going to face millions of Vorthan soldiers. The numbers were so absurd that they would have been funny if the situation weren't so desperate. After the briefing ended, the Zephyrian officers returned to their ships in a state of barely controlled panic. Their last hope for survival was a single human ship with a crew that seemed either incredibly brave or completely insane. Sir, Morrison's communications officer reported as the aliens left, long-range sensors are detecting movement at the edge of the system, multiple hyperspace signatures approaching. Morrison nodded calmly. The Vorthan fleet? Preliminary analysis suggests yes, sir. Large formation, estimated arrival in 18 hours. Very well. All departments, begin standard. Pre-combat preparations. Dr. West, I want a full analysis of their technology once they arrive. Commander Rivera? Start working on firing solutions for their probable formation patterns. As the Endeavor's crew began their preparations, Admiral Kexthara sat in his quarters staring out at the human ship. It looked so small and fragile compared to his massive flagship. Tomorrow, it would face the combined might of the Vorthan Empire and probably be destroyed in the first few minutes of battle. The space around Nexus Prime erupted in flashes of light as the Vorthan Empire's main fleet emerged from hyperspace. Admiral Kexthara watched his tactical display with growing horror as ship after ship appeared on the scanner. First dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of vessels filled the dark void of space. "Final count, Admiral," reported his sensor officer, his voice barely above a whisper. 3,147 Vorthan vessels, including their flagship, the Worldbreaker. Kexthara had heard stories about the Worldbreaker. It was a massive dreadnought over 4 kilometers long, armed with weapons that could destroy planets. The ship had personally overseen the destruction of 6 Zephyrian worlds, and now it was here to finish the job on the bridge of the Endeavor. Captain Morrison studied the same tactical display with calm interest. The Vorthan fleet was spread out across millions of kilometers, their ships arranged in perfect formation. It was an impressive sight, even if the technology was primitive by human standards. "Captain," Lieutenant Commander Rivera reported from her tactical station, "the Vorthan fleet is moving into attack formation. They're keeping their distance for now, probably trying to identify our capabilities. Any communications from them?" Morrison asked. "Yes, sir. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Putting it through now, the main screen flickered and a massive alien face appeared. Fleet Commander Zulkin was a terrifying sight, with 6 eyes arranged around a mouth filled with sharp teeth. His skin was dark red and bony ridges covered his skull. When he spoke, his voice was like gravel grinding against metal. "Attention, humans and Zephyrians," Zulkin announced. "I am Fleet Commander Zulkin of the Vorthan Empire. Your pathetic resistance ends now. I offer you one chance to surrender. Submit to the Empire, and your deaths will be quick." Morrison stood up from his captain's chair and smoothed his uniform. "Put me through to all ships in the system," he ordered. The communications officer nodded. "You're broadcasting, Captain." Morrison looked directly at the camera. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Endeavor. Fleet Commander Zulkin, this system is now under the protection of the Human Colonial Defense Treaty. Your presence here is illegal. Withdraw your forces immediately or face defensive action." Zulkin's 6 eyes widened and then he began to laugh. It was a horrible sound, like metal being torn apart. "You dare to threaten me? One tiny ship against the might of the Vorthan Empire? You humans are either very brave or very stupid." "I've given you fair warning," Morrison replied calmly. "You have 10 minutes to begin your withdrawal." Zulkin's laughter stopped. "Very well. Let me show you what happens to those who defy the Empire." He turned to his officers. "Target the largest Zephyrian vessel, full power bombardment." 50 Vorthan heavy cruisers moved into position around Admiral Kexthara's flagship. Their plasma cannons began to glow with deadly energy, building up to maximum power. The Zephyrian ship's shields came online, but everyone knew they wouldn't be enough. "All ships, emergency evasive maneuvers," Kexthara ordered, but he knew it was too late. The Vorthan weapons fired simultaneously, sending streams of superheated plasma across space. The flagship's shields flared and died instantly. The hull began to melt under the incredible heat, but just as the ship was about to be destroyed, something impossible happened. The plasma stream suddenly stopped, as if they had hit an invisible wall. The Vorthan weapons continued to fire, but their energy was being absorbed by something the aliens couldn't see. "What is happening?" Zulkin demanded from his bridge. "Why are our weapons not working?" On the Endeavor, Dr. West monitored her instruments with satisfaction. "Defensive field is holding perfectly, Captain. Their weapons are being absorbed and converted to power for our own systems." Morrison nodded. "Thank you, Doctor. Commander Rivera, you may begin defensive operations." Rivera's fingers danced over her control panel. Aye, sir. Engaging point defense systems. The Endeavor had been designed to fight in the most dangerous environments in the galaxy. Its defensive systems were so advanced that they could track and target thousands of objects simultaneously. As the Vorthan fleet opened fire with everything they had, the human ship's point defense grid came online. Streams of energy and projectiles erupted from the Endeavor's hull, creating a web of destruction around the ship. Every plasma bolt, every missile, every kinetic round that the Vorthans fired was intercepted and destroyed before it could reach its target. The space around the human vessel lit up like a deadly fireworks display. Impossible, Zulkan whispered, watching his fleet's weapons prove completely useless against the small human ship. No ship can defend against that much firepower. But the Endeavor wasn't just defending. Rivera had been analyzing the Vorthan fleet's formation and weaknesses, and now she was ready to strike back. Captain, I have firing solutions on their entire fleet. Shall I begin offensive operations? Morrison checked his chronometer. 10 minutes are up. Yes, Commander, weapons free. The Endeavor's true power was revealed for the first time. Along its hull, dozens of weapon ports opened and advanced targeting systems locked onto Vorthan ships across the vast battlefield. The human vessel's main weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen: kinetic penetrators launched from magnetic accelerators, crossing millions of kilometers in seconds. Each projectile was a dense metal rod moving at a significant fraction of light speed. When they hit Vorthan ships, they punched through shields and armor as if they were made of paper. Quantum torpedoes materialized inside enemy vessels, bypassing their shields entirely. These weapons existed in a state of quantum superposition until the moment of impact, making them impossible to intercept or defend against. Energy beams powered by the ship's exotic matter reactor reached across impossible distances to strike with perfect accuracy. Each beam carried enough power to vaporize a city, but they were focused with such precision that they could target specific systems on enemy ships. Commander Paul Rodriguez monitored the power systems from his engineering station. All weapon systems operating at optimal efficiency, Captain. We're actually generating more power than we're using, thanks to the energy absorption from their attacks. The Vorthan fleet, which had seemed so overwhelming just minutes before, began to fall apart under the Endeavor's assault. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were destroyed in seconds. The perfect formations that had terrified entire star systems broke apart as vessels tried desperately to escape the human ship's targeting systems. Retreat! Zulkan screamed over the communications channel. All ships, retreat immediately. But retreat was not an option. The Endeavor's electronic warfare systems had been quietly working since the battle began, disrupting the Vorthan fleet's hyperspace drives and communication systems. The alien ships found themselves trapped, unable to escape or coordinate their defense. Captain, Rivera reported, I'm detecting massive system failures throughout their fleet. Their hyperspace drives are offline, their communications are jammed, and their navigation systems are being overloaded by our electronic countermeasures. Morrison watched the tactical display as hundreds of Vorthan ships went dark, their crews struggling to understand what was happening to their supposedly invincible fleet. How many ships have been destroyed or disabled? Over 800, sir, and the number is climbing fast. At this rate, we'll have eliminated their entire fleet within the hour. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kexthara stared at his tactical display in complete disbelief. The single human ship was systematically destroying the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Weapons that had seemed impossible were tearing through Vorthan defenses as if they didn't exist. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving transmissions from the Vorthan fleet. They're calling for reinforcements, but their messages are being blocked by some kind of interference. Kexthara realized that the humans had thought of everything. They weren't just defeating the Vorthan fleet. They were ensuring that word of this battle would never reach the Empire's other forces. The Endeavor was fighting with a level of tactical sophistication that the Zephyrians had never imagined possible. Captain Morrison, Kexthara said over the communication channel. How is this possible? How can one ship defeat so many? Morrison's voice came back calm and steady. Admiral, what you're seeing is standard defensive protocol for an Earth-heavy cruiser. The Endeavour is actually one of our older ships, but it's still more than capable of handling local threats. Local threats. The Vorthan Empire, which had conquered half the galaxy, was being dismissed as a local threat by a single human ship. Kexthara began to understand that his people had encountered something far beyond their comprehension. The battle continued, but it was no longer a battle. It was a demonstration of technological superiority so complete that it defied belief. The Endeavour moved through the Vorthan fleet like a force of nature, unstoppable and inevitable, and this was just the beginning. The battle had been raging for 2 hours, but it looked nothing like what anyone had expected. The Endeavour moved through the Vorthan fleet like a shark among minnows, its weapons reaching out to touch enemy ships across impossible distances. Each time a Vorthan vessel tried to fight back, its weapons simply vanished into the human ship's defensive fields. Fleet Commander Zulkin stood on the bridge of the Worldbreaker, watching his mighty fleet fall apart around him. Ships that had terrorized entire star systems were being picked off one by one, their crews helpless against weapons they couldn't understand. The single human vessel seemed to be everywhere at once, striking targets on all sides of the massive Vorthan formation. "Fleet Commander," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking with fear, "we've lost over half our ships. The remaining vessels are reporting total system failures. Their weapons are useless, their shields are failing, and their engines are being disrupted by some kind of interference." Zulkin's 6 eyes focused on the tactical display. Red dots, representing destroyed ships, covered the screen like scattered blood. The few remaining green dots that marked active Vorthan vessels were flickering as their systems failed one by one. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our ships carry the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Our shields can stop nuclear bombardment. How is one small vessel defeating our entire fleet?" On the Endeavour, Commander Paul Rodriguez monitored the ship's power systems with growing amazement. The quantum reactors that powered the human vessel were actually producing more energy than they were consuming, thanks to the absorption systems that converted enemy fire into usable power. "Captain," Rodriguez reported, "we're running at 115% power efficiency. The Vorthan weapons are actually making us stronger. Our main reactors are barely working while the absorption grid handles all our power needs." Captain Morrison nodded as he watched the tactical display. The Endeavour's advanced artificial intelligence was coordinating thousands of weapon systems simultaneously, each one tracking and destroying enemy targets with perfect precision. The ship's computers could process more information in 1 second than the entire Vorthan fleet could handle in an hour. "Time to target completion, Commander Rivera?" Morrison asked. Lieutenant Commander Rivera checked her tactical board. "At current rate of engagement, sir. We'll have eliminated or disabled the entire Vorthan fleet in approximately 43 minutes. Though I should mention that several enemy ships are attempting to surrender. Standard protocol applies," Morrison replied. "Accept surrenders but maintain defensive posture until all hostile capabilities are neutralized." Dr. Carol West looked up from her science station, where she had been analyzing the wreckage of destroyed Vorthan ships. "Captain, I'm getting some interesting data from the debris field. Their technology is actually quite primitive by our standards. Their plasma weapons are just enhanced fusion reactors, and their shields are basic electromagnetic barriers." "How primitive are we talking, Doctor?" Morrison asked. West consulted her readings. "I'd estimate their technology level is roughly equivalent to what Earth had about 3,000 years ago. During our early space expansion period, they've improved on the basics, but they never developed the fundamental breakthroughs that led to our current capabilities." Morrison found this information fascinating but not surprising. Humanity had taken a very different path in technological development compared to most galactic civilizations. While other species had focused on making existing technologies more powerful, humans had discovered entirely new principles of physics and engineering. The Endeavour's weapons were based on exotic matter manipulation, quantum field theory, and dimensional engineering. Its defensive systems used principles that most alien scientists would consider impossible. Even its basic power source drew energy from the quantum fluctuations of empty space itself. "Communications Officer Clark," Morrison said, turning to a young woman with blonde hair and blue eyes, "what are you picking up from the Vorthan fleet's internal communications?" Helen Clark had been monitoring enemy transmissions since the battle began. "Sir, they're completely panicked. They keep sending requests for reinforcements, but their messages aren't getting through our jamming systems. Many ships are reporting that their crews are abandoning their posts." "Any particular patterns in their communications?" Clark nodded. "They keep asking the same questions over and over. How are we moving so fast? How are our weapons reaching them at such long range? How are we targeting so many ships at once? They seem to think we must be using some kind of magic." On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kexthara watched the one-sided battle with growing wonder and terror. The human ship was demonstrating capabilities that seemed to violate the basic laws of physics. Its weapons fired in directions where no enemy ships were visible, yet somehow found their targets across millions of kilometers of space. "Admiral," his science officer reported, "I'm detecting some kind of subspace manipulation around the human vessel. They appear to be bending space itself to extend their weapon range and increase their maneuverability." Kexthara had never heard of technology that could manipulate space-time on such a scale. The Zephyrian Confederation's most advanced scientists had theorized about such possibilities, but they had always been considered impossible fantasies. "What about their defensive systems?" he asked. "Sir, they're not just blocking enemy fire. They're converting it into power for their own systems. Every time the Vorthans shoot at them, the human ship gets stronger." The implications were staggering. The humans had technology that could turn enemy attacks into an advantage. No wonder they had seemed so confident about facing overwhelming odds. From their perspective, a larger enemy fleet simply meant more free energy for their systems. Back on the Endeavour, the crew continued their work with professional efficiency. To them, this was just another mission, another chance to test their equipment against local threats. The idea that they were reshaping the balance of power in the galaxy never occurred to them. "Captain," Rivera announced, "the enemy flagship is attempting to break away from the main fleet. The Worldbreaker is trying to reach the edge of the system." Morrison studied the tactical display. The massive Vorthan dreadnought was indeed moving. Away from the battle, its escort ships forming a protective screen around it. Fleet Commander Zulkan was apparently hoping to escape and warn the Empire about the human threat. "Can we allow that, Commander?" Rivera smiled. "Not according to our operational parameters, sir. Standard protocol requires neutralization of all hostile command and control assets." "Proceed with interdiction." The Endeavour changed course with fluid grace, its advanced propulsion systems allowing it to move through space like a living thing. The ship's speed was limited only by the need to maintain structural integrity. And even that limit was far beyond what most alien races thought possible. As the human vessel approached the Worldbreaker, Zulkan ordered his remaining ships to concentrate all their firepower on the single target. Hundreds of plasma cannons fired simultaneously, creating a wall of superheated energy that should have vaporized anything in its path. The plasma streams struck the Endeavour's defensive fields and simply vanished, their energy absorbed and converted to power the human ship's systems. The attack that should have destroyed a dozen normal vessels only made the Endeavour stronger. "Impossible," Zulkan whispered. "Nothing can absorb that much energy." But the Endeavour was not finished demonstrating its capabilities. As it closed with the Worldbreaker, new weapon systems came online. Gravitational manipulators that could crush ships like tin cans. Matter disintegrators that could reduce solid metal to component atoms. And most terrifying of all, temporal distortion fields that could slow down enemy ships while the Endeavour moved at normal speed. The Worldbreaker, pride of the Vorthan Empire, began to buckle under gravitational forces that no ship was designed to withstand. Its massive hull groaned and twisted as space itself bent around it. "Fleet Commander," his engineering officer reported, Our hull is failing. The structural integrity fields are overloading. We have maybe minutes before complete collapse? Zulkan stared at the human ship through his viewport. It looked so small, so fragile compared to his mighty dreadnought. Yet it wielded power that could reshape reality itself. Send a message to the human vessel, he ordered quietly. Tell them we surrender. The greatest fleet in galactic history was about to fall to a single ship that humanity considered outdated. And somehow, Zulkan suspected that this was only the beginning of a new age in the galaxy. 3 hours after the battle began, the space around Nexus Prime was filled with the wreckage of what had once been the most feared fleet in the galaxy. Broken Vorthan ships drifted in the void, their hulls cracked open and their systems dead. Of the 3,000 vessels that had arrived to conquer the system, only 200 remained intact, and those only because their crews had surrendered. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the Endeavor, reviewing the final battle reports. The human ship showed no signs of damage from the engagement. In fact, thanks to the energy absorption systems, it was operating at higher efficiency than when the battle had started. Final casualty report, Commander Rivera? Morrison asked. Lieutenant. Commander Rivera checked her tactical display one last time. 2,847 Vorthine vessels destroyed or permanently disabled. 193 surrendered and are currently under guard by our automated systems. 0 damage to the Endeavor. 0 human casualties, Morrison nodded. It had been a textbook defensive engagement, exactly the kind of operation the Endeavor had been designed for. Dr. West, what's your assessment of the wreckage field? Dr. Carol West looked up from her science station. Captain, I've completed my analysis of Vorthan technology. It's actually quite interesting from a historical perspective. They appear to have developed along the same basic path as most galactic civilizations, improving existing technologies, rather than discovering new fundamental principles. How does their technology compare to our current standards? West consulted her notes. Their most advanced weapons are roughly equivalent to what Earth was using about 4,000 years ago. Their defensive systems are even more primitive. It's actually remarkable that they managed to conquer as much territory as they did. Morrison found this information useful but not surprising. Humanity had long ago learned that most alien civilizations followed predictable technological development patterns. They would improve their weapons and shields incrementally over thousands of years, but they rarely made the breakthrough discoveries that led to truly advanced capabilities. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kexthara was still trying to process what he had witnessed. The single human ship had not just defeated the Vorthan Empire's greatest fleet. It had made the battle look easy, almost routine. The humans had acted like they were conducting a training exercise rather than fighting for their lives. Admiral, his communications officer reported, Captain Morrison is requesting a meeting to discuss post-battle arrangements. Kexthara straightened his uniform and tried to compose himself. He had so many questions that he didn't know where to begin. Put him through. Morrison appeared on the main screen, looking as calm and professional as he had before the battle. Admiral Kexthara, I wanted to confirm that the immediate threat to your system has been neutralized. The surviving Vorthan vessels are being held under guard pending further instructions from Earth Command. Captain Morrison, Kexthara said slowly, I must ask you something. The Endeavor is truly just one ship, correct? This is not some kind of advanced holographic projection or dimensional technology that makes one ship appear to be alone. Morrison looked puzzled by the question. That's correct, Admiral. The Endeavor is a single heavy cruiser with a crew of 847. Why do you ask? Kexthara struggled to find words. Captain, the fleet you just destroyed had conquered half the galaxy. They had weapons that could crack planets and numbers that seemed overwhelming. How is it possible for one ship to achieve such a victory? Morrison considered the question carefully. Admiral, I think there may be some confusion about the Endeavor's capabilities. While it's true that we're just one ship, we are equipped with the latest Earth defensive technology. The Vorthan weapons were powerful by local standards, but they're Not particularly advanced compared to what we're used to dealing with. Local standards? Kexthara repeated. Captain, are you saying that there are threats in Earth space that are more dangerous than the Vorthan Empire? Oh yes, Morrison replied. Matter-of-factly. The Endeavor was originally designed to patrol the outer colonies, where we sometimes encounter hostile alien species with much more advanced technology than what we've seen here. The Vorthans were actually quite predictable compared to some of the threats we face regularly. Kexthara felt his understanding of the galaxy shift fundamentally. If the Vorthan Empire, which had seemed invincible to every other species, was considered a minor threat by human standards, then what did that say about Earth's true military capabilities? Captain, he asked hesitantly, may I ask what class of ship the Endeavor represents in your fleet? Morrison checked his records. The Endeavor is a Mark 7 heavy cruiser, commissioned about 15 years ago. It's actually scheduled for decommissioning next year since it's being replaced by more advanced designs. Decommissioning? Kexthara's voice rose in shock. You mean this ship is considered obsolete by your standards? Not obsolete exactly, but older technology. The new Mark 12 cruisers have much better efficiency ratings and improved weapon systems. The Endeavor is still perfectly capable for missions like this one, but it's not really state-of-the-art anymore. Admiral Kexthara sat down heavily in his command chair. The ship that had just single-handedly destroyed the most powerful fleet in galactic history was considered outdated by human standards. What would happen if Earth ever decided to send their newest, most advanced vessels into this region of space? Dr. West interrupted the conversation with a new report. Captain, I'm detecting several more hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. It looks like representatives from multiple alien governments. Morrison turned to his communications. Officer, any identification on the incoming ships? Helen Clark checked her sensors. Sir, I'm reading vessels from at least 12 different species. Talaxy Federation, Hegemony Council, Free Worlds Alliance, and several others I don't recognize. They're all broadcasting requests for immediate diplomatic contact. Word of the battle had apparently spread quickly through the galaxy's communication networks. Species that had never shown interest in the Zephyrian Confederation were suddenly very eager to make contact with the humans who had defeated the Vorthan Empire. Over the next several hours, Captain Morrison found himself in a series of diplomatic meetings with alien representatives. Each species offered treaties, trade agreements, and military alliances. All of them wanted to ensure that Earth would consider them friendly neighbors, rather than potential threats. The Talaxy ambassador was particularly insistent. Captain Morrison, the Talaxy Federation would be honored to host an Earth naval base in our territory. We can offer exclusive mining rights to rare elements, preferential trade status, and full diplomatic immunity for all human personnel. Similar offers came from every other species. The aliens were clearly terrified that Earth might decide they represented a threat worth eliminating. The casual ease with which the Endeavor had destroyed the Vorthan fleet had sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy. During a brief break between meetings, Morrison contacted Admiral Kexthara privately. Admiral, I wanted to discuss the long-term security situation in this region. Earth Command will be establishing a permanent presence here to ensure that threats like the Vorthan Empire don't arise again. What kind of presence? Kexthara asked. Nothing. Too extensive. Probably just a patrol squadron of 4 or 5 ships, with a supply depot on one of your outer worlds. We'll rotate crews every 6 months to keep them fresh. Kexthara tried to imagine what a patrol squadron of ships like the Endeavor could accomplish. If one obsolete human cruiser could destroy the Vorthan Empire, what could 5 modern vessels do? They could probably conquer the entire galaxy without breaking a sweat. Captain, he said carefully, the Zephyrian Confederation would be honored to serve as Earth's primary ally in this region. We offer complete cooperation with any human military operations and full access to our resources and facilities. Morrison smiled. That's very generous, Admiral. I'm sure Earth Command will appreciate your cooperation. As the Endeavor prepared to leave the system, Captain Morrison received new orders from Earth. Another desperate species in a different sector had requested military assistance against an overwhelming enemy force. The pattern was becoming familiar across the galaxy as word of human capabilities spread. "Set course for the Andorian system," Morrison ordered. "It looks like we have another situation to handle." The Endeavor jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind a fundamentally changed galaxy. Species that had never cooperated before were forming alliances to ensure they stayed on humanity's good side. Trade routes were being rerouted to pass through human-controlled space. And throughout known space, military leaders were trying to figure out how to defend against an enemy whose weakest ships could destroy their strongest fleets. Admiral Kexthara watched the human ship disappear and realized that the galaxy had just entered a new age. Humanity had announced its presence not with conquest or diplomacy, but by casually demonstrating that their bare minimum effort was sufficient to reshape the balance of power among the stars, and somewhere in Earth space, dozens of ships far more advanced than the Endeavor were being built in preparation for humanity's continued expansion.